The unintended economic impacts of China's Belt and Road Initiative. China's footprint in global foreign direct investment, FDI, has increased notably since the launch of the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, in 2013. That served to bring Chinese overseas FDI closer to a level that one would expect, based on the country's weight in the global economy. China accounted for about 12% of global cross-border mergers and acquisitions and 9% of announced greenfield FDI projects between 2013 and 2018. Chinese overseas FDI rose from $10 billion in 2005, 0.5% of Chinese GDP, to nearly $180 billion in 2017, 1.5% of GDP. Likewise, annual construction contracts awarded to Chinese companies increased from $10 billion in 2005 to more than $100 billion in 2017. Interestingly, however, the American Enterprise Institute's China Global Investment Tracker recorded $420 billion worth of investment and construction in BRI countries versus $655 billion in other countries between 2013 and 2018. So China actually invested more in countries outside the BRI during the period, given that Chinese investment in developed countries tends to have larger market values, particularly for mergers and acquisitions. The next president needs to learn from past mistakes. As a member of the transition team, I've been asked to give a backgrounder on the loss of global influence issue that played such a major role in the last election. I've submitted my study entitled End of Empire, and I would encourage you to read my full analysis. I've been told that you might not have the time to read all 3 volumes. As a historian, I find it extraordinarily difficult to boil this question down to 750 words. But I will try. Historians are divided into roughly 3 camps on the causes behind the end of the unipolar system headed by our country. The largest camp is the Iraq Syndrome group. They argue that the U.S. decision to invade Iraq in 2003 was the critical, history-changing moment. As you well know, the invasion turned into an unsuccessful 10-year occupation that sapped the U.S. economy and significantly eroded U.S. reputation in the world. More damaging, however, was the syndrome that followed the war. The unpopularity of the war made it increasingly difficult for the United States to launch military operations and virtually impossible to solicit international support. Although the Democrats tried to maintain high military budgets through 2010, they ultimately had to make significant cuts in order to salvage the economy.